Hi, I'm Ann Hoskins. I'm with Public Service Enterprise Group, and I oversee sustainability and public affairs. We had a very interesting table of folks with a lot of reporting expertise, but also some multinational experience. We also had a hard time making a choice, so we answered 2 questions, which really looked at the issues on some of the reporting issues, but also how we can make the business case and the link between those 2. And we did find that if we could simplify some of the efforts that people talked about, I guess, at the session this morning, find a way to make the data easier to understand and maybe a little more streamlined, and we can link it, obviously for the internal business users, that'll be important. But the interesting thing, I think, around our conversation was the multinational element. So it was interesting to me that the companies are seeing very different cultural expectations and understanding and support for sustainability outside of the United States as compared to inside the United States. And maybe a hope that as companies become a little more multicultural and a little generationally diverse, that we may have greater acceptance in a broader understanding of ROI. Thank you.
Now let's go to table 9, please.
My name's Todd Arbogast. I work for Avon, the cosmetics company, and I lead the sustainability efforts there. So Mike would appreciate, we talked about GRI reporting as well. We talked about subjects such as G4, integrated reporting, complexity, investors, internal, great conversation. The net is sustainability reporting is here to stay, but we're at a crossroads. What will G4 mean? Who will implement it? What does integrated reporting mean? Who will implement it? We're at a crossroads.
That's a new record. That's 33 seconds. Let's go to table 8, please.
Hi, I'm Amy Springsteel from ING US. I'm the Director of Corporate Responsibility there. We chose the ever-popular business case for corporate responsibility, and we came up with, in general, 4 factors. We had a robust discussion, but I narrowed them down to 4 factors. First, there's a lot of research out there that talks about employee retention and recruitment, the ability for companies to enter new markets when you focus on corporate responsibility and sustainability, your ability to innovate products and services. So research was the first piece. We talked about being ahead of the regulations when they're already starting to come down, and if you focus in this area, you'll be ahead of the game. We talked about the consumer becoming more sophisticated, the sort of green consumer, about their purchasing decisions, and ultimately that being a responsible and sustainable company is just more about better managing your risk and taking advantage of opportunities, and that's really the business case for it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. Now over here to this table.
Hi, I'm Emily Keller. I'm an editorial associate in corporate philanthropy at the Foundation Center. We had a discussion moderated by Erica Karp of UBS Investment Bank, and we focused on the question, what are the roles that companies have in communities, and also we added in the philanthropy community. So we went over the nexus of CSR in business and profitability, and the difference between CSR and philanthropy. They're often discussed simultaneously. So we talked about, is one more significant and in assessing what Erica calls corporate excellence and the impact on society and how they fit into each other. We discussed the need for impact assessments in terms of initiatives and the design of communication and the power of communication in initiatives. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Now to table 6, please.
10 seconds. I'm Suzanne Fallender. I work in Intel's Global Corporate Responsibility Office, and we picked the ROI topic, and we had a good mix of people at our table as well, from UNICEF to Monsanto, from Rabobank to Sustainability, and the U.S. Chamber of Foundation to Mosaic. And we talked about first whether there was a need for a business case for sustainability, and just to ground on that and say, yes, there is, but that can be different for different audiences. And how do you not just assume that everyone knows what that business case means, whether you're talking internally to corporate and government affairs versus engineers? How do you tailor that to drive the action that you need? The business case has to be put into practice. The other thing we talked about is time horizon for the business case, short versus long term, and also bridging the short-term business case to that longer-term case and vice versa. Externally, we talked about partnerships and how partnerships and the discussion of the business case and how those partnerships can change the business models. We talked about UNICEF partnering with a company to help them understand a social issue so they could develop new types of products and services in the long term. But in the short term, really a philanthropic effort. So understanding the case needs to be made, but how you make it, and then also how do you look at different partnerships differently. So thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne. So now over here to table 5.
Thanks. Reg Foster, I'm with IBM, do the coordination of our CR reporting. We had a great table with great people. We went off topic completely and talked about the supply chain issue that was really, I think, a couple of the phrases I picked up from our folks, game-changing, reaching a tipping point, and that is that the largest increase in CR reporting and for impact on business is actually happening business to business now through companies pushing down through their supply chain questionnaires. Those questionnaires are surveys. They're getting more sophisticated. They're getting longer. They're really starting to resemble the GRI or any full CSR survey. They're also, companies are attaching higher stakes to them now. It's becoming a criteria for whether or not you can bid on a contract, that you have supplied that information to your client. I'm seeing, and others, in our discussion, people are actually being asked to do them as existing contractors as a condition of continuing to do business. And we think that that's maybe one of the mechanisms that's pushing this the fastest right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Reg. I think table 4, do you guys have a report out? No, so we'll go to table 2, please.
Martin Reeves, BCG. We had a great discussion on, you could call it the material issue or the strategic issue, the idea being that we all report on 50 or so issues, but there's usually one which will probably make the difference between flourishing and bankruptcy on a 10 or 20-year time scale. How do you address that issue? There's a whole bunch of barriers to addressing that issue. Fear of controversy, short-term profitability, misunderstanding of stakeholders, isolation from stakeholders. Reporting, ironically, may create more information confusion than necessarily focus, and so on and so on. But we also heard that actually there are a whole bunch of things that companies can do to, these companies are doing, to focus on material issues. The transparency and proactiveness, partnering and engagement, listening to what other stakeholders think of the material issues. Prioritization, how do you take things that are apples and pears and reduce them to a common denominator. Education, engaging and eliminating misperceptions, and innovation in products and business models. So great discussion, and thanks very much to our people at the table from Conference Board, GM, CSC, AT&T, BMS, and Spectrum for a great discussion.
Big hand for Martin. Now, Martin and David Kieran will be speaking later on the program. I hope you guys have been listening to all of these issues and will be ready to answer all of the questions that were raised. In 1 minute. Yeah, we'll give you 3. We'll give you 3 minutes. Okay, so that was table 2. Table 3.
Hi, Chris Kircher with ConAgra Foods. I'm in charge of citizenship for ConAgra Foods. We had a very diverse table here, which was good. It was a lively discussion. We talked about the ROI question. I think there were a lot of items discussed at our table that you heard earlier, but we kind of came out with sort of a couple of takeaways. One, that as far as the business case, there are kind of 3 elements. It's the right thing to do. You can make money or you can save money, i.e. reduce costs. How do you do that? Well, there's not one size fits all, not a one-size-fits-all approach for every company. I think every company has different considerations on how to make that case. It may come through your stakeholder base. If you're engaged in the environment, maybe there's an opportunity to improve your margins or reduce costs. You may have a cause marketing initiative underway that could actually help, drive your sales. There's the employee engagement argument. So I guess our big takeaway was there's not really one solution, but there's almost always a business case to be made.
Thanks, Chris. That was great. Table 1.
Hi, I'm Susan McNally. I'm from Accenture. We're a consulting organization. We have about 250,000 employees globally and do business in about 120 countries, and I lead business development here in North America. So we had a great table and a great debate. We've got finance, technology, consulting, and food business and law all together. So really, ultimately, what we discussed is that measurements, it's not an exercise in measuring, right? It's an exercise in trying to affect change and trying to affect the way products come to market and making them more efficient. So we talked about examples of where and how we've seen that in our practices. And we talked about an example, I'll give you 3. We talked about one where the process of collecting the CR data actually affected the strategy of the CR team. It helped them realize where they were focusing and where they weren't, so that changed their strategy. The second one is, I loved this example of, they tied the collection of CR reporting and making certain lists, like the DJSI, making that list into executive bonus packages. And that was a very effective way to see change in the organization. And then lastly was another interesting one where a company was going through a CEO change, and the board saw the CR data that had been collected, and the board actually decided to revamp some of the board's focus in the year as a result of that data. So if the goal here is to affect change and not go through an exercise of just collecting data, we're seeing positive trend.
Thank you, Susan. So the prize for the most long-winded goes to Mike Wallace from the GRI. Big hand for Mike. Thank you, Mike. And the prize for shortest and most brief goes to Todd Arbogast from Avon. Thank you, Todd, for keeping us on schedule. I appreciate it. So now, I think those are some wonderful discussions and some great issues that you've helped us frame up. I'm challenged David and Martin to sort of try to address some of those questions and the research that they're going to do, and we'll bring those up throughout the rest of our discussions today. But right now, it's my pleasure to ask up to the podium Michelle Green. Michelle is the head of corporate responsibility here at the New York Stock Exchange, but more than that, she's been a true friend to Corporate Responsibility Magazine and to the CROA, and somebody who has really helped make sure that our partnership worked well together, and I think it's really helped move the whole agenda of corporate responsibility, particularly for publicly traded companies, forward. So please, a big hand for Michelle Green.
Thank you so much, and thanks again to everyone for being here and for participating in those discussions. Fascinating to hear the report outs. I was sitting next to Dirk Olin, who's the editor of CR Magazine, and said, you should be getting a lot of article ideas right now. Just really, really rich conversation, so thank you all. I actually want to start with some thank yous to the people who really made this day happen, which, as always, are the people who do the work. And so Gunjali's probably out in the hallway still helping people, but Gunjali Trika from our team really did a ton of the work here. You probably all emailed with her, so thank you, Gunjali. And then from the shared expertise team, Richard, as he mentioned, he's been a fantastic partner, not just in this event, but in so much of the work that we do together throughout the year, including research, including events, including articles, just a terrific partner. And the CROA team, Bill, and the rest of the team were terrific in pulling this event together, too. So thank you so much. We are really here today because this is part of our CR mission. At NYSE Euronext, we really look at our own CR mission. Of course, it has to start at home, and we've got to do things right here. And we're the first global exchange group to go carbon neutral. We've been a GRI reporter for 3 years, and regularly make many of the lists that you all make as well. But we really see our mission as moving beyond that. And as you all know, corporate responsibility done well aligns with your broader corporate strategy. And for us, part of our broader corporate strategy is building a community amongst our companies. And we are really fortunate that listed on NYSE Euronext exchanges, we have the world's leading companies. And I say that on any parameter you want to measure it, but especially on sustainability and corporate responsibility. This past year, 87% was the magic number.
And this is just coincidental. It's not the same 87%, but 87% of the top 100 corporate citizens from last year were NYSE Euronext listed companies. 87% of the CDP Leadership Index, not the exact same companies, were NYSE Euronext listed companies, and 87% of the DJSI were NYSE Euronext listed companies. Totally bizarre coincidence. If it happens again this year, I'm going to start wondering what's going on with the data. But we're really, really thrilled to have such a community of companies that are really leaders in the corporate responsibility and sustainability space. And we see part of our mission with that group of companies and with a broader group of stakeholders. We've talked a lot in the tables you heard today that it was a really diverse mix of people at every one of these tables, because corporate responsibility is not something that any one sector can do alone. And so we really look at this as a multi-sector engagement where we need to be talking to nonprofits, we need to be talking to policymakers, we need to be talking to associations, and all of the companies in this room are doing that. So we're thrilled to bring you all together today. We hope you had some chance to network at your tables and had some interesting discussions. We hope you'll find some of the people from the other tables who had interesting things to say at the networking event later today. But we really see this as part of our mission. We look at our role to celebrate some of the good work that our companies and other stakeholders are doing, and we do that through things like bell ringings. Those of you who make the top 20 list of the top 100 corporate citizens will be up on the podium ringing the bell today. We do that by spotlights. We publish spotlights about the work that our companies are doing. We do that by providing tools. This morning there was a GRI workshop downstairs, and we host CDP workshops, and we provide other tools to companies on their own sustainability journeys to help them with that. And so we really want to see you all succeed in your corporate responsibility efforts, and we want to celebrate those successes. So we're thrilled that this is part of that effort. This is our third annual Corporate Responsibility Forum, and our theme today is our corporations and our communities. And the reason that we chose that theme for this year, and you heard it come through actually in a lot of the table report outs, was because we do think that there are changes going on in the expectations around corporations, in the expectations of cross-sector collaboration, and in the expectations of what a community actually is and to which communities we bear responsibility. And so we'll get into those conversations throughout today as we talk a little bit more about those topics in these different events that you'll see taking place over the next couple of hours. We've crammed everything in. There are not any breaks. Mike Wallace already ate 34 extra seconds of your time, so you're even more crammed in now. But we do have coffee and sugar in the room, the desserts and the coffee's back there, so you've got pretty much everything you need. Unless you drink too much coffee, then you'll need to leave the room. And we hope that it will be a really engaging and interesting program. I'm just going to give you a very brief rundown of what you're going to hear today so you know where to focus and when to take your bathroom break. We are going to first, one of the things that we try and do in this panel each year is to introduce to you some of the interesting research that's gone on over the course of the past year, and to let you hear from the researchers themselves and be able to question them about it. So we will have a presentation by BCG and MIT about some of the work that they've been doing, and you'll get to ask your questions to them about how they arrived at the conclusions that they arrived at out of that research. And then we've done something a little bit different this year in terms of our corporate panel. In the past couple of years, we've had primarily CROs talking, and we've done kind of a broad panel of people from different sectors. We decided to change it up this year, and instead we've got 2 CEOs. And what we did was we chose CEOs who have kind of a broad view of the corporate sector. One of those, of course, I'm biased, is my own CEO, Duncan Niederauer, who really has been working very hard on these issues, brings them up in his meetings with other CEOs, is really, has staked out a real leadership role in this. So I feel really fortunate to work with him. And so he's going to offer his perspectives on what he's seeing both in the capital markets as it relates to sustainability and within the broader corporate sector as well. And then we also have John Viemeyer from KPMG, who similarly has a broad corporate perspective on this, and in his case, even more so, can drill down a bit into the reporting questions that we heard raised throughout the table report outs. So I think you'll find the 2 of them will offer some really interesting and insightful perspectives from a broad viewpoint, not just from their own companies. And then we have our keynote speaker, Cory Booker. And for those of you who have not heard him speak before, I don't want to oversell, but the man can make a point. And I think you will really enjoy hearing from him. Cory is someone who cares deeply about community, and he's worked with corporations in his own community. That's been an important part of his own effort to revitalize Newark. And so you'll hear from him firsthand how that plays out for a policymaker. So we thought that would be an interesting counterpoint to the CEO perspectives. And then, finally, the moment you will all have been waiting for, the top 100 corporate citizens for this year will be revealed by CR Magazine, and we do it in a very dramatic, Oscar-like fashion. The important point to remember here, if you think your company might be on the list, only one person from each company gets to come to the podium. So start fighting it out now. We're not going to pick. You have to pick. Rub out the competition, whatever you have to do. But it'll be one person from each of the top 20 companies who will come up. And those top 20 companies will get to come up to the bell podium and ring the closing bell today. While those top 20 companies are ringing the closing bell, the rest of us will be down on the trading floor. And we will give you a brief tour of the trading floor, which is actually fun and interesting, and particularly at closing, because things get a little more active then. Everything's now on handholds, no more paper. And you'll get to watch the bell ringing from down on the floor, and then we're all going to come back up here for a cocktail reception afterward, and that's where I hope you'll really have an opportunity to interact with each other, to find people who you think said interesting things or you think said really stupid things, let them know what you thought about their comments, and really engage with one another. So we're looking forward to a really fun, interesting, and we hope really, really worthwhile afternoon for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Elliot Clark. I'm the CEO and publisher of Corporate Responsibility Magazine. And as Michelle pointed out, now would be an excellent time for a bathroom break. Now I'm going to talk for a few minutes. You know, it's interesting, everyone's making fun of Mike Wallace, which I understand, but I'd like to point out that Mike made a comment that I thought was particularly telling for today. He talked about the ROI of reputation and the importance of being on lists. So without further ado, let's talk about which of your companies is on the 100 best list. Ryan Seacrest will do that right after this message. Or in this case, Dirk Olin. Now, the interesting thing is that this is a little bit like CR Idol, right? This is the best and the brightest, and we're going to trot out the list. Okay? And it's CR Idol this year. But I want you to remember one thing. In 10 years, it's going to be CR Survivor. Because in 10 years, your employees, your customers, your shareholders will vote you off the island if you aren't meeting at least minimum standards. So right now, it might be sort of funny to do the CR Idol, but it's going to change. And it's getting, and you all live that every day. What we want to do is help you tell that story. Okay, that's part of what our goal is. So I'd like to welcome you to the 14th annual 100 Best Corporate Citizens List announcement. I'd like to thank Michelle Green of the New York Stock Exchange once again hosting the event and her marvelous staff, and for our ongoing partnership. It is incredibly important to our organization. I'd like to thank the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, who's not yet here, Duncan Niederauer, for his unwavering support for corporate responsibility programming and, for taking part in ours. I want to take a moment to also recognize the people who make the list possible. First, I'd like to thank our VP and editorial director, who's now vanished, Dirk Olin. He was here a moment ago. I guess he figured I was going to do the reveal, and he just left. There's Dirk. You'll meet Dirk in just a few minutes if you haven't already. They worked tirelessly on the list creation. I'd like to thank our VP and research director, Elizabeth Boudry, who is not here today. She works very closely with our data processing partner, IW Financial. Okay. I'd also like to thank Reg Foster from IBM, who chairs the methodology committee of the Corporate Responsibility Officers Association that works very closely with us on the protocols and helps us to understand the changing landscape of responsibility from the viewpoint of the practitioner. So Reg and support from IBM has been invaluable, and leadership of that committee has been so important to improving this year over year. And lastly, I'd like to thank Richard Crespin. our president for his role in helping to promote and illuminate the issue of corporate responsibility to the world community. I am sad to announce Richard is leaving Shared Expertise after a 5-year tenure. So this is actually his last week with us. He's following his heart and his passion for public service and will be taking on a role at the U.S. Chamber, helping coordinate the ongoing Superstorm Sandy relief effort. So I expect that someday we will be talking about Congressman Crispin or Senator Crispin. Okay? And I applaud him for moving on to his destiny. He is both my partner and my friend, and I will miss working with him. So I'm sure that you all join me in thanking him for the work he's done, for corporate responsibility. He will continue to work with the CROA and help advise Shared Expertise. I'd also like to welcome our new executive director, Alfred Williams. Allie, stand up. Allie Williams is a veteran association executive, formerly of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the American Chamber of Commerce executives. He starts Monday, so literally be a baton pass in our office on Monday morning. He has a long history of membership development and leadership. Joining Allie is Heather Nielsen. Raise your hand, because Mike Runner over there, she's got the mic, as membership manager to coordinate services to the members of CROA. So please join me in welcoming them, and please introduce yourself to them later. They'd love to meet you. Don't quiz them on CR just yet. They're on a bit of a learning curve. That's why we sat Allie next to Mike Wallace, so Mike could shield him, okay? Finally, yeah, exactly. It took long enough, right? We're how many minutes into the program? But today we celebrate corporate responsibility. Okay, we recognize the top 100 performers of the Russell 1000 using our index, which is based on over 310 data points in 7 categories. We spend time each year evaluating the criteria, the weightings, and the analysis. Now, I'd like to take a moment to discuss the biggest issue, the elephant in the room, the 800-pound gorilla, whatever metaphor or cliche you want to use. We use the word responsibility, but how do we actually describe it? What does responsibility really mean? Okay? So Winston Churchill said the price of greatness is responsibility. Now, I like that. To be truly great at anything, you need to take responsibility for your actions. The future is also about, responsibility is about what you do and how it affects the future. Abraham Lincoln, who arguably has a better publicist than Churchill because Spielberg did a movie with him, said, this is his quote, "You cannot escape the responsibility for tomorrow by evading it today." It's a great quote. So you cannot escape the responsibility by evading it today. We will all be judged in the future based on what we do today, individually, our companies, our associations. The future has a harsh and unforgiving objectivity, and we lack that in the heat of the moment we call the present. So the question is each of the companies represented on the 100 Best Corporate Citizens list embracing the responsibility they have to the future? We certainly all want to, and we all want you to. We all reference leaving the planet healthier, banishing poverty, disease, and illiteracy. As we strive to these lofty aspirations, we take responsibility for the future. And I hope we're doing it the right way. A good deal of our time is spent trying to deal with regulatory compliance issues, however, or figure out strategic frameworks and what issues we want to address or support. Now, I grant you, governance, risk, and compliance are important parts of running a business. We need to operationalize the concept of compliance. But compliance is not necessarily being responsible. That is simply achieving the minimum. My comment earlier about CR Survivor. This is one of the reasons why CR Magazine measures so much more. Being responsible is about exceeding the standard. It's about more than compliance. Being responsible is also about execution. Okay, so the corporate responsibility movement is overwhelmed with a discussion of causes, issues, and needs. All right? Companies are sometimes castigated for one behavior by a given group of activists and simultaneously must process requests for support from dozens of others. Any of you had an NGO ask you for money recently? Well, everyone has to, right? So when we think about corporate responsibility right now, and I looked across the program of a number of different organizations, including our own, we're at no loss about what to care for. In fact, we're beleaguered by what? Climate change, spotted owls, conflict minerals, what coming out of our ears? We have lots and lots of what, okay? Now, to be great, you also need to be able to do how. All right, and part of the analysis is we went back and looked at our own data. Now, in the 5-year period between 2007 and 2012, so I won't tell you what happened this year, okay? But in those, for that 5 or 6 year period, only 11 companies were on our list each and every year. These are companies that are great at execution on responsibility programs. In fact, 2 of the companies are represented here in the room. I'm going to ask representatives from them to stand up, IBM and Intel. Okay, would the members of that delegation. It's about how. So how to manage a CR program, how to realign your supply chain, manage a foundation, secure third-party assurance. They're all examples of how issues we need to address. And we want to offer you the opportunity through the Corporate Responsibility Association, or the Corporate Responsibility Officers Association, that we are going to look at rebranding, the ability to find instructional thought leadership pieces, develop that ROI or business case for sustainability, how to develop your responsibility brand, and how to develop networks and peer-to-peer learning opportunities, et cetera. Now, I'm not here to sell you a membership in the CROA, but I am here to say that the desperate need is really to help people figure out how. And that's one of the areas that we're going to commit to. There are many places to get information on what, but we want to help with how. The other component of a successful responsibility program is belief. All right, belief is critical. It's far more powerful than regulation and law. Society moves forward when people believe they can actually change the world. And when the world needs change, belief is the fuel that actually changes it. You know, what corporations are doing with public-private partnerships, philanthropy, workforce development programs are critically important because they're all belief-driven. I know this may be utopian to suggest, and I'll step out on the platform for just a moment with a utopian suggestion, but would not the world be a better place if we focused on behavior, and we measure a lot of what we do in the 100 Best is about behaviors. We focused on behavior and fostering belief and educating morality than on passing passing another 1,000 pages of regulations. I'm sure you all like getting new regulations every year. But remember, no one passed a law mandating the Renaissance. Okay, there was no regulation that initiated the Age of Reason. Regulations don't really make a big difference to the world. A lot of times they're about what happened in the rearview mirror. They're not really looking ahead. The world changes when people begin to act and think differently. And for the most part, the world gets better. And you all, I want to congratulate you, are helping that happen. So, how's this tie into the 100 Best Corporate Citizens list? Well, I just told you, it's about behaviors, okay? Most of what we look at is how you treat the environment, how you treat your employees, how you treat your fellow humans in society. We realized, by the way, in doing this analysis, that you folks in this room cannot describe effectively what you do in corporate responsibility programs, because everyone assumes you have a dog in the fight, okay? I will tell you who can tell your stories, because one of the things we're committed to is helping you tell your story. Your employees can when they take an engagement survey. Your customers can when you treat them with respect. And your communities can when you foster development. So we want to work with you over the next year. Part of what we want to do at Shared Expertise and Corporate Responsibility Magazine, CROA, we want you to work with us to tell these stories through the voice of your employees, through the voice of your stakeholders, through the voice of the communities and your customers. We want to get these stories about the power of belief into the public consciousness. because these are the examples of responsibility that we'll all be remembered for in the future. And we stand, all of us together here, at the forefront of the corporate responsibility movement. This is still a relatively new thing. I want to remind you that we see the aggregate scores of the 100 best companies continue to improve year over year as behaviors improve. So that proves that what you and your companies are doing is actually the right thing. So I quoted Churchill and Lincoln earlier. Now here's the last quote. And try to guess what famous person said it, what world leader. I believe that every right imposes or implies a responsibility. I believe every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity an obligation, every possession a duty. So the quote was, I believe every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity an obligation, and every possession a duty. Does anyone know? It wasn't a world leader, it wasn't a religious leader, it was a businessman. It was the personal credo of John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller, certainly later in life was more well known for his philanthropy than for his business acumen. So his concern for society eventually came to define him. And if you walk around New York, you can see Rockefeller's name on a lot of things that they endowed. So to the 2013 100 best corporate citizen companies and their representatives, I say congratulations on being responsible. And the future is awaiting your continued contribution. So it is now my pleasure to welcome Martin Reeves of Boston Consulting Group and David Kieran of MIT to the stage to actually go over their latest research on the corporate responsibility movement and what they've done. Once again, thank you for your time and your attention. Martin, David.